Well, let me tell you, every Thursday, I've got a town hall meeting in Washington with Dick Durbin, my senior senator. We call it a constituent coffee. Anybody who shows up, we give them coffee and some donuts, which is probably why they come. But they're also able to ask us any questions that we want, and then we take pictures. And several months ago, a young man showed up, and he didn't come up to Dick Durbin and I until at the end of the meeting. He couldn't have been more than 25, 26 years old. And he had a gash right down the middle of his forehead. And he was blinded in both eyes. And the bottom of his face was disfigured. And he had lost the use of one arm and one leg. And he described how he had been on patrol in Iraq, and an IED had blown up, and he had been in a coma for 6 months. And he described what it had been like to finally come out of the coma and start rehabilitating himself, and despite the fact that he no longer could recognize himself, going home and having a daughter who was about one of my daughter's ages, coming up and giving a hug and saying, "I still love you, Daddy." But probably knowing that their lives were never going to be the same. And as he spoke, I didn't look at him, I looked at his wife. Young woman, 23, 24 years old, with a child and a husband now who was going to have to go through what no family should have to go through. And I was reminded that politics isn't a sport. Politics isn't a game. That the decisions that we make in Washington matter. And that we have a sacred obligation to make sure that a government of and by the people and for the people actually is one in which we are actively participating. Not one that we can afford to be cynical about. And that's what this campaign has to be about, is making sure that people understand it's time to pay attention, it's time to slough off the summer, it's time to get involved, it's time to get engaged. You know, we have to take over Washington and create a new kind of politics. That's our plan. That's our plan. When I announced, some people said, you know, Obama, he can give a heck of a speech, and he's got talent, he's done some good legislation, but you know, we're not sure if he's experienced enough to be president. And I say to them, look, I understand, I'm a relatively young man to be running for president. I say, but when it comes to experience, let me describe to you my experience. I've got enough experience as a community organizer working in neighborhoods and with churches to know that ordinary people can do extraordinary things if they're given an opportunity. I've got that experience. I've got enough experience as a civil rights lawyer to know that fairness and justice and equality have to be fought for each and every day, that we can't take them for granted. I've got that experience. I've got enough experience teaching constitutional law for 10 years at the University of Chicago to actually respect the Constitution. And when we're in business purpose, I believe you don't detain people without trial. I believe you don't snoop into people's emails and read their letters and tap their phones without going to courts and judges. I have that experience. I've got enough experience as a state legislator to know what it's like to bring different parties and different factions together to reform a death penalty system that's broken, or to provide health insurance to children who didn't have it, or to pass ethics reform against the resistance of Democrats and Republicans. I have that experience. I've got the experience of working across the aisle in Washington to pass some of the toughest ethics reform legislation since Watergate, to deal with issues like nuclear proliferation and the dissemination of weapons all across the globe with people like Senator Dick Lugar of Indiana. I've got that experience, but But here, most of all, I said, you know, when you say I don't have enough experience, what you really mean is I haven't been in Washington long enough. And it's true, I haven't been in Washington long enough. But I want you guys to know I've been in Washington long enough to know that Washington needs to change. Now, here's the exciting thing. When we decide that we're going to take this government back, it turns out that we can actually solve the problems that sometimes seem insoluble. Because the truth is, the reason we're not making progress is not technical. We've got good answers for the challenges we face. We know what to do with we know what to do with healthcare. We know that if you put money into prevention, children, instead of going to the emergency room, the most expensive kind of care, they don't have to go there for asthma, juvenile diabetes. We can provide proper treatment. That saves money. We can provide caseworkers for those who are chronically ill, so that instead of reimbursing somebody for a $30,000 leg amputation if they've got diabetes, we give them a caseworker who's working with them regularly. And they never have to have a leg amputated. That saves money. We know that that technology can drastically reduce the bureaucracy. There's no reason why we have to have all the paperwork that we do in the medical profession. We can take all those savings, all that money, and we can put it in to make sure that every single person has health care in this country. In fact, by the end of my first term as president, every single American should have a basic health care plan. I want to be held accountable for that. We know what to do with education. We know that if we put money into early childhood education, the children come to school prepared that first day. And they don't start falling behind in the first place. We know that we've got to work with our teachers. We've got to pay them more and respect them more, give them more flexibility, and empower them. And they'll be happy to be held accountable if we give them the resources they need. They want to see our children succeed. So, we know that although there's no silver bullet for our energy problems, there are a series of bullets that'll work pretty good. There's no reason why we can't have automobiles in this country that get 50, 60, 70 miles a gallon. We can develop it in fuel efficiency standards, so that we can develop the same way Brazil has developed biodiesel and alternative fuels. So that 80% of the cars on the road run on flexible fuels in Brazil. If Brazil can do it, America can do it. America's got that can-do spirit. We know that if we put a price on greenhouse gases, if we cap it and say to companies and industries and power plants, you can't keep on sending carbon dioxide into the atmosphere that is changing the climate of this planet, that industry will come in and investors will come in, they'll put money in, we will develop jobs and entirely new industries and entrepreneurship throughout the green revolution in this country. We've got to do that now. There's no reason why we can't do it. We know that if we lay broadband lines in rural areas and in urban areas and get everybody access to the digital economy, that we can spread the benefits of globalization, and we can make sure that every American has not just a minimum wage, but a living wage. And we can talk to, and we can encourage unions to be able to organize so that folks get a fair shake in this country. We know what to do.